Developer joy. You might think, like, why is this guy from Atlassian talking about developer joy? Developers have the greatest jobs in the world, right? They create really things for their customers, right? With a few lines of code, they directly create something, create a feature or something for the customer. So why is this guy staying on the stage here and talking about developer joy? Well, so in the last 10 years, actually, software development has changed. Not just that the AI came to it, but there's a lot of other stuff. And we talked a little bit about it. So for example, the cloud came, right? Developers had to learn new cloud toolings and how to use AWS services and so on, right? And then everything runs now into little small containers. So we had to containerize our applications. We had to learn how to deal with containers. The container is down, everything else is also down. The first time I used a container, I had the log file in the container. The container was down. I wanted to look at the log file. The log file was gone, of course. So I had to also learn how to use containers. It's different thing. Then microservices came, and we have the whole APIs between the microservices. What happens now if the microservice on the other side is down and I want to call those microservices? I have to catch that. Was way easier when I had a monolith, right? When I wrote just like one bunch of code that was running. And then security and governance. Now that everything is running in the cloud, we have to take care because there are nasty people that want to break into our program. So we also have to just like think about security and governance, and don't let me start it with you build it, you run it, right? Now developers are not just like building the code, they are also responsible for running it, and they have to take care about observability of the things that we do. So there's a lot of stuff putting on the shoulders of software developers in the last 10 years. And of course, yeah, that means more cognitive load. But don't get me wrong, I think all of these things are actually for the better. So it's great that we are now also responsible for the code that is running, right? Not just like throwing it over the wall and it's now the IT person's job. No, it's our job also to make sure that the code is running in the cloud. So, but of course, we're doing more now as software developers. But now managers come up and say, hey, we know, right? When we look at how many features we put out 10 years ago and now you're not productive anymore. So how can we get back to productivity, right? Can you get back to productivity? And you said, duh. Well, you put everything on our shoulders now and we just like, now you know what want to make us productive. Where does this productivity obsession come from? So let me just like, do a little bit of a time travel with you, if that's okay with you, right? We're traveling back in time all together, 126 years, is that okay? Yeah. I count to 3 and then we travel back in time. So 1, 2, 3, boom, ooh, here we are in the year 1898 in the Bethlehem Steel Factory. So the Bethlehem Steel Factory at that time had some productivity issues. And at that time, there was no McKinsey you could call or Boston Consulting Group to bring in a bunch of consultants and fix your productivity issues. No. So they hired one person, and his name was Frederick Winslow Taylor. Some people might have heard of Frederick Winslow Taylor here. Who heard of Frederick Winslow Taylor? One person. 2 persons. Okay, great. He's famous. You can all read about it. For Taylorism, I can also, after the talk, tell you all about it. So, but the first thing that Frederick Winslow Taylor did was looking at the workers, pulling out his stopwatch, and measuring how fast things were going in the factory. And then he rearranged some stuff because people had to walk too long and so on and so on. But he also noticed when they were actually, the workers were shuffling coal, right? They were just like shuffling coal, and there were coal falling left and right from the shuffle. So the first thing that did was just like give the workers better shuffles to just like shuffle coal. The shuffle was made for shuffling soil, but they need to have special tools, right, to do their job. So that was the first thing. The second thing was he was just like stopwatching how long it took for people to carry stuff. And of course, people could carry more stuff in the morning than in the evening. They get exhausted, of course, right? So what he did was actually he gave the workers more breaks in between. So over the whole day, they could carry actually more. And all in all, he did a lot of other stuff too, optimizing the Bethlehem Steel Factory, and he increased the productivity by 400%. Wow, right? This is what we want to do from software developers, right? Increase the productivity by 400%. But hey, wait. Everything comes with a flip side here. So the workers were actually just like doing just repetitive tasks anymore. They don't need to think. They don't need to think. They're just like we're doing repetitive tasks, and the managers were all doing the thinking. This is not something that we want to have, right? And this is freaking 126 years ago. So coming back to the year 2024, right? We are still talking about productivity, and we develop our productivity. But we're still trying to do the same things than Taylor did with the factory workers. So how do we measure actually developer productivity? What's our stopwatch? Well, the first job that I did, people just like saying, okay, count the lines of code you added, right? And that's the productivity, that's a good productivity measure. Because it's not, right? We all know that. Yeah, I can write a lot of lines of code if I want, but not being very productive. Okay, let's count then the issues that we move into the done column. Well, that's better, right? Yeah, we move some issues. That's a better thing, right? But still, like there are larger and smaller issues, so maybe not that bad, that good developer productivity measurement. Yeah, but we have story points, right? Let's count the story points, or make it easier, T-shirt sizes, right? Let's count that, right? And then I say, that's not a measure for productivity. That's an estimation. We do it before we actually do the job, right? Sometimes we estimate, yeah, that's a medium story, right? But then it takes us as long as a large story. So not a good measurement for how productive we are. And you probably heard about new things like cycle time or deployment frequency. Well, we're getting closer here. But let's assume we have found the super measurement, right? The super measurement of productivity. What are we doing then, right? Yeah, we say, okay, we need to improve the productivity now that we have a baseline. We just like 10% more story points, 20% faster. We are still thinking in Taylorism terms, right? Thank you very much for so Taylor. We are still there. So developer productivity really, really hard. That's why a lot of people call it now developer experience. Improve the developer experience, which I think it's a better term, and it brings it better to what it is. But already there, some consultants come, like McKinsey, and put out these developer experience measurement thing, right? And you have story points again, and you just try to measure things again. Well, so we at Atlassian, we said, okay, let's take it really. What's the real best experience that developer can have? It's when you enjoy your work. So we say we need to go back to developer joy, right? When we really, really, really enjoy what we do. And guess what? When we enjoy what we do, we are productive. It's as easy as that. So what do you need to improve? What brings me joy when I do my job as a developer? First, if I work with great quality code. If the code is great, I'm opening my IDE, look at the code and say, wow, that's amazing code. I love to work it. I love to work with that code. Second, I can move things forward fast, right? I don't have to wait. There's no other team that I depend on. I can just like, I just like grab an idea and implement it and deploy it on Thursday morning after grabbing it on Monday, right? So if things move fast and I don't have to stop in between, that's great. I enjoy what I'm doing. And also, of course, if I create great value for my customers, right? If my customers come back and say, Sven, this feature that you just like deployed, that's awesome. It helps us so much. I'm super pumped. I super enjoy what I do. And then, guess what? With all of the three things coming together, I'm also productive. So I brought to you 3 stories from 3 Atlassian teams where they actually struggle a little bit with enjoying what they're doing and changing things, so improving their developer joy. And the first thing is around code reviews. So are developers here in the room? A few? Yeah? You're doing code reviews, right? Not? Yeah, right? Okay, good to know. But a lot of companies or a lot of developers are actually struggling with code reviews. A lot of teams are struggling with that because you're putting your code out there to your code, your work out there to your coworkers. I have an example here. So let's assume I have added these lines of code, very simple, right? Put it on a pull request and say, hey, can the team please review my code? And the first comment that I get is this one here. And I said, oh, okay, I'm a professional developer, right? I ask, what do you mean? And then this person says, this code looks ugly. So, boom, stop. I don't want to do code reviews anymore. I'm done with code reviews. I hate code reviews, right? But yeah, so I'm just like taking myself back, breathe in, breathe out, and say, okay, why do you think the code is ugly? And then this person says, yeah, it would have been nice if you used a for loop. I used a while loop here. So it would have been nice if you... And I say, what do you mean by nicer, right? What can I learn from being nicer, right? What do you mean by nicer? So just one sentence to those people that do these kinds of comments. Don't be a jerk, right? So from the developers here in the room, who has been bullied by a jerk, let's say in the last 1 month? No, I know your coworkers are in the room, so don't raise your hands, right? So it's okay. It's okay. Let's have a conversation afterwards here. But actually, these reviews are the reason why people don't like code reviews. That's the reason why people just like say, I don't want to put my code out there. I get critique about my code, and people are nasty, right? But we know code reviews are good to improve the code quality, to learn all the things. So the Jira team can actually say, okay, we need to find something to have a better feeling around code reviews. And they came up and say, okay, this reviewer. As a reviewer, you're in this protected bubble. You can just like throw things at the author who's opening themselves up, right? They're opening themselves up, their work, and you can just like you just like have to deal with what comes out of the reviewer. So we set some rules here. The Jira team set some rules and says, first, assume competence. We're doing a lot of code interviews when we hire people, and we know we hire good programmers. So assume this programmer is competent, right? The second thing is be constructive in your feedback. This code looks ugly. It's not very constructive, right? So be constructive in your feedback and also explain the reasoning, right? A for loop would be nicer. Where's the reason behind it? Tell me. I want to learn too. So explain the reasoning. So simple as that, they wrote down some rules. They call it the pull request submission and review etiquette. And there are some more things in there, also for the authors, right? And they wrote everything down and said, this is our contract. This is our contract, so this is how we work. This is how we communicate through code reviews. And if someone violates that, you can say, hey, stop. We agreed on this here, right? Look at our etiquette. So this means actually less bullying or no bullying, hopefully, at coworkers, and then more developer joy, more enjoying what you're doing. So software development is all around on the developer flow. I love to code, right? I love being in the flow and to code. But unfortunately, software development is not just around coding. There's much more in the software development lifecycle. There's build and test phases and deploy phases. And yeah, maybe that can take hours to minutes, the build and test phase, but I can optimize that. I can also optimize the deploy phase by just like building small little microservice and just deploy a microservice. All of that I can optimize. But there's one thing in between, and that's the review phase. And the review phase can actually take days, right? So it's better to optimize that phase, right? And the Confluence team actually, we're measuring a lot of things. Also, we're measuring the pull request cycle time. And this one team has actually 3 days of cycle time for pull requests, which is way too long for them. Because it means 3 days from average from opening a pull request to merge it back. But it means 3 days of waiting for the author to merge the code review. And then if feedback comes back, it's like, oh, what did I do 3 days ago? I can't remember. We want to move things forward fast. We want to move things closer to the customer. We want to deploy the feature faster. So one person in that team, just like the team lead actually, his name is Punit Arora, looked at it, all the open pull requests, the reviewers attached to it, and then said, okay, in the morning, every morning, he just like give them a ping and says, hey, there's an open pull request. Your coworkers want to move forward, right? Before you go into your flow phase, right, and there's code, just like, can you please review that pull request? Super simple. And then also, after a while, People really like that, and they were reviewing code more often or earlier in the cycle. And I don't want to. He didn't want to blame the people, right? It could be that someone was just like into real deep, forgot about the notification that they got, and then moved on. But it wasn't his job. That's what the team said. It's not your job, Punit, to do this. So we replace you by a bot called the Punit bot. So they wrote a bot that's now pinging everyone in the morning, reminding them of the open pull request that they want to review. And they cut down the pull request time from 3 days to 1.2 days. So it is not just that they got pinged. Also, they learned about, I know, I wanted to review it, I looked at it, it's way too much, right? So please make smaller pull requests, right? So there's too much files involved, all those things, right? So they learned it during that phase, and that's why they cut down the time, the pull request time. So less wait time needs more developer joy. I can just like move things forward faster to the customer. As I said, I love the flow, and optimizing the flow in the team is great. Right, there's pull request and so on, right? Optimizing that is great, but the most friction that we have is probably between teams, right? So how do we remove the friction between teams? Between different teams in software development? Well, the best is we don't work with other teams, right? We make our teams as autonomous as possible. And the lights got out. Great. Woo! Romantic. So autonomous teams can actually run on their own pace, right? And are not dependent on other teams. Great. But what does that mean? How do I make my team more autonomous, right? I need to align first my autonomous teams so they don't run into super different directions. But what does that mean? It means that I need some roles on my team. Like I don't want to be dependent on the design team, so I need a designer on the team. I don't want to be dependent on the QA team, so I need QA on my team, or the ops team, right? I want to have an ops person on my team. So you can run autonomously. Great. Sounds great in theory, but the Trello team had the following problem, right? They looked at QA because they want to have someone on the QA team, but the ratio of developers to QA people is 1 to 30. So we can't put on every team a QA person, and there's not enough work to do on one team for a QA person. So how do we solve that? So we looked at it, the Trello team actually looked at it and says, okay, the developers are responsible for the automated tests, right? Automated tests, and the QA were responsible for the exploratory tests, so click-through tests and so on, right? Just like doing manual testing. So they said, okay, we put everything into responsibility of the developers. And QA is just an enabling team. It's just an assistant team, right? They just assist the developers to write, to just like test their code. So it works like this. So the QA person, the quality assistant persons, and the developers come together when they want to develop a new user story, right? So they come together, wrote through the user story, and wrote together the test plan. And from that point on, the QA person was leaving. And the developer was implementing the user story, testing it according to the test plan, and then deploying it. Well, there's one step more, as you can see. There's also a demo phase, where actually the QA person can take part of the demo and say, have you tried to test this or that, or jump in, right, and do something. But we don't want to have friction in this process. The QA person is just in the beginning with the developers, and the rest is done by the developer. So that actually means less dependencies on other teams, less wait time for just like waiting until the other team is done, and more developer joy at the end. And you also own you get more responsibility for what you build, right? Because you're also now testing the thing and you can't throw it over the wall anymore to the QA team. So you're just like also responsible for the quality of what you do. So these were just like 3 teams and 3 different challenges that I presented to you. Great. But we are here at the eazyBI Community Day, right? It's all about data, right? What would Frederick Winslow Taylor say to these fluffy things that I just presented? Where's the measurement, right? And it was not Frederick Winslow Taylor that asked these questions, but it was Peter Drucker said, if you can't can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? So where do you start with measuring stuff? Where do you start? Well, if you don't know where, the DORA metrics are a good start. If you're running a microservice architecture, that's a good start to just like look at something like deployment frequency, change failure rate, time to restore, or lead time to change. It's obviously a good start. Do that, but it doesn't apply to every team, right? If you're a mobile team doing mobile software, deployment frequency doesn't make sense for you, right? It doesn't make sense. So it's important to look at what's your problem in your team, and measure. Try to find a measurement that represents that, right? It could be a deployment frequency, but it could be also something like time spent on bugs or infrastructure or whatever. Just like, what do you see in the team is a problem? So we're doing that. We're doing that with the teams. It's their responsibility. So we're doing the measurements in Compass, Atlassian's developer experience platform. So we're doing that, but we also set baselines. We just like want to have standards. So the team sets themselves baselines to see, this number just like dropped. We have to do something. So you can see that it turns yellow here. The DevOps health, but it's great, right? But sometimes things turn yellow. Let's say deployment frequency isn't good enough. It's just like we deployed less in this iteration. So is that a problem? Maybe. But if you just like work on a very complicated part of the subsystem, we know it's dropping, it's fine, right? It's no problem, right? We couldn't deploy because we're just like working on this very complicated part. The deployment frequency will go up again. So always add context to your measurements, right? And we do that with a weekly ritual we call check-ops. So every week the team comes together, looks at the numbers, looks at the alerts, and say, okay, why did this number drop, or what's happening, to just like give the numbers context around it. And sometimes, as I said, there's no need to change anything because there's a reason why numbers drop. People go on vacation, people get sick, whatever, right? So also just like add context to your numbers. So we built this actually directly into Compass, so you can do this check ops ritual in Compass and just like take notes, talk about actions that you want to take. So it's a very individual thing for every team. Now, I told you, right? It's what is important, fix the important thing for the team. But there's one metric actually that we track over all Atlassian developers. And that is how much time we spent on things. So how much time did we actually spend on changing the business, on building new features for the customers that really helps our customers? How is that? So, but we're not just spending 100% of the time. That would be great on doing that. We're also spending time on what we call keeping the lights on. Infrastructure, bug fixes, all those things. But we need to have a good balance between those two, a healthy balance. And this is what we want from teams, just like say, what's your healthy balance? And we found out that we need a minimum, or we want a minimum of 55% of spending time on changing the business and 35% maximum on keeping the lights on. We're lowering that number on the right. But this is the minimum the maximum that we want to spend was keeping the lights on. Now, you think just like Sven, you can't really calculate, right? But because 55 plus 35, that's 90. And it's because we are also spending 10% of the time on developer joy. You saw all this Punit bot. That's written in 10% of the time. So we spend 10% of the time on developer joy, and this is really a company goal, that you minimum spend 10% of the time on doing developer joy. And we're measuring that. This is Atlassian Analytics, so we're putting that all into Jira. We're labeling the issues that we work on, and so we can have this nice graphs and see just like how the teams are doing. Now, measurements is great, right? So GitHub actually did this experiment they call the Good Day Project. And then the Good Day Project, actually, they were first asking the developers, how good was your day? Right? How productive did you feel today? And then people were just like saying, oh, today I was super productive. And other days were, not so productive. And then they overlaid it actually with the data they could measure, check-ins. And guess what? They couldn't find a correlation between those two things. People were feeling productive, but the data wasn't showing it, right? So, yeah, we can try to measure, poor AutoCAD here, we can try to measure everything. We need to add context, but also we need to realize that software development, we can't treat it like the Bethlehem Steel Factory. Software development is a creative job. It's not like, okay, we need to optimize this and this and this, right? We're not building the same car over and over again. Everything that we do every day is new, right? We're inventing something new. So we can't treat it like a production line, right? So don't treat your software development as a production line. It's not. So the thing is, measure what's important, but don't make important what you can measure, right? This is super important. And you can't try to measure everything and just say, oh, I see this thing has changed, and that's why we need to be more productive in that area. But that's a waste of time. That's normally a waste of time, because you know how to find out actually what's the problem in your software development. It's basically this. Ask your software developers, right? Ask them. They know always, like, yeah, we know the builds takes too long, or the pull requests are just like too long. They know that. You just like simply ask them. So what we do is a developer survey. We call that the Developer Joy Survey. And we ask the following questions in that survey, right? How satisfied are you with your speed to ship quality code? How satisfied are you with your waiting time? How satisfied are you with the execution independence, with your access to tools, processes, and practices, effort managing external standards, like security and governance, managing your code pipeline and infrastructure? How about the ramp-up time if you get new developers? Is that okay, right? Are you satisfied with that? And then also, what is your developer satisfaction overall? How do you feel, right, as a developer, right? So we're asking all these questions. So we're asking, how satisfied are you? And some teams are satisfied with one thing, and some teams are less satisfied with another thing. But also what we ask, not only this, we're also asking another question, because we have around 200 software development teams at Atlassian. So every team is different. So we're also asking, right, how important is that for your team, right? It might be that ramp-up time isn't important for one team, but it's important for another team. And out of these two measurements, if things are important and satisfied, we're calculating a so-called opportunity score. And then we put it on an axis here. You see like the importance here, satisfaction there. And things that are in this light corridor are okay, right? We're doing fine. It's a good balance between importance and satisfaction. But if we go below here, it's important, but people are not very satisfied with it. We need to do something about it. That's the areas we should look at, and we should find measurements for and measure it. If we just like go above this light area, well, it is possibly not very important, or people are super satisfied with it. Maybe you want to change that and ask another questions in your next survey. Seems to be not really relevant for you. But this really helps us to see just like what are the problematic areas. So we give that back to the software developers or the teams so they can fix their problems. And actually we've written everything around down here. If you know the team playbook, it's a play in the team playbook. You can just like go.atlassian.com/developerjoy, which will lead you to this play in the playbook, and then it's all there. All the questions are there, and also how you calculate the opportunity score and how we just like calculate the traffic light system that is behind that. So, said that is, now you just like figured out this is my problem. The next step is to try to fix things. Try to fix things. And I showed you the 3 examples from Atlassian teams that try to fix some things and improve their developer joy. But it's also important for them to spread your learnings, because every team is just like doing things individually, right? So also important to spread the learning so other teams can learn from your successes. So for example, the Punit bot, the team wrote a blog post about it. It's talking all about just like how the Punit bot works, what it does, why the team built it, and then shared it with everyone. And now I think there are around 30 teams at Atlassian that actually run the Punit bot within their team. So it's also important just like that you share what you did. So to sum this up, you take your measurements. It's not bad. They're just like showing you signals. The measurements showing you signals, and the survey results showing you the real problem areas. Take that, bring that to your autonomous teams, right? That can fix things on their own. Also important, give them time. Let them allow to use their time to fix some stuff, and then improve the developer quality, the developer progress, and the value that you create. And I always wanted to do a Venn diagram in my talks, and here it is, right? Right in the middle there. That's actually where developer joy is happening. If I work with great quality code, if I go fast, and if I create the right value for the customer, what they love, that's really when I enjoy what I'm doing. We became all developers for a reason, right? Because this job is fun, right? So don't forget to have fun, right? Have joy, and thank you very much.